Hey there, everybody. It's Jay Frost speaking to you, of course, from the Philanthropy Mastermind series. So happy to have you here. And we are getting perilously close to the big part of the holiday season. So I hope that things are going well for you as you reach out to the people who care and love your mission and are inviting them to participate in all that you do. And you're also getting ready for things in the home front. I know it's a busy time, and so I deeply appreciate the fact that you're spending a little bit of that time with us. But I know that you will really benefit from our guest today, Wendy Kobler, who will be talking about, the transitions that probably some of you are anticipating for next year or maybe a little further ahead in the future. But before I get into that, I want to welcome you and of course, thank our sponsor of this series, which is DonorSearch. We won't be talking about DonorSearch much today unless our guest chooses to mention them for some reason. But that doesn't mean that we don't want you to know more about them. You can learn all about them and about the Philanthropy Mastermind series over on the DonorSearch site, which is located at DonorSearch.net. Again, that's DonorSearch.net. And under the Resources tab, you'll find lots of information on all the sessions that we've had in this year and years past, as well as things coming up in the future. We already have over 24 programs scheduled, as well as 8 new podcasts. So lots of content there. I hope you'll check that out, as well as past sessions that are there, as well as on YouTube. So while you're there, you can also learn a lot about your donors. And I know that how important they are to you. So do check out what DonorSearch has to offer to provide you those really important insights into them and the things that they care about. So today, of course, we're talking about those big transitions again, and more specifically, Changing Lanes for Good, which I thought was a brilliant title that Wendy had suggested. Nonprofit career shifts from education to human services, a journey that she has made, only one of the journeys that she has made. So she has a lot to share with us today. So it's really a pleasure to welcome you, Wendy, to the Philanthropy Mastermind series. Thanks so much for hanging out today.
Happy December, Jay. It certainly is. It's the last month of the year. And every year I sit here early December and I wonder what happened to all that time, all that planning, all that strategizing, everything we've done to get ready for where we are right now. And it's here imminent upon us, as I'm certain many of our colleagues are feeling.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. In fact, even the signs in your wall, I think, speak to that. Grind, execution, and what is the last one? It looks like it's mission.
Grind, execution, and hustle.
Oh, hustle. Which is what I'm sure you've been doing, and I suspect everybody else in the room has been doing for the last 11 plus months. So yeah, it's a busy time, but I hope people have made a little space themselves to think about what the future holds, which I know is the kernel of our conversation today. So before we jump into it, though, Wendy, I'd love it if you wouldn't mind, rather than my reading your bio, which would take a lot of your time, you have a tremendous history in philanthropy as well as working in the private sector before that. Can you give us kind of a thumbnail sketch so people have an idea about where you're coming from as we dive into the subject?
Certainly, Jay. So I have a sales and marketing background. 15 years ago, I never dreamed that I would be working in higher education or the human services sector. And so I was actually in sales and marketing for a software company where I was making a lot of money for the shareholders. In fact, very few people know this, but I was actually offered the opportunity to buy a small part into the company, to invest in the company, to become a shareholder, and to continue to generate revenue. And I was actually very active and engaged in the community because I believe the community has helped create my success. And there was a new president at a university, and at the time, my hometown, Huntsville, Alabama. And while I was living in Huntsville, we have a historically Black college and university, Alabama A&M, the Fighting Bulldogs. Super big shout out to them. And actually, where my master's degree is from is Alabama A&M. And we had a new president, and he was looking to bring someone in local to lead their brand new division of marketing, communication, and advancement. I did not have a fundraising background, but I had a background in marketing and communication. I applied for the position. I quickly found out what it was like to work at a nonprofit, a mission-driven nonprofit, and I found my passion and have not looked back since. The only problem was I did not know how to fundraise. And so there's a gentleman in Auburn, Alabama, Jerry Smith. Jerry introduced me and taught me the 5-step process of fundraising, the rules of the road, as well as our colleagues at the Lilly School of Philanthropy at IUPUI. And I learned how to ask for money with a one-sentence ask and to fundraise. So transitioning from sales and marketing, which a lot of people view as transactional versus relational, I would disagree with that. But I have had a very successful career transition, and I have raised a whole heck of a lot of money for deserving organizations. And so from higher education, just about a year ago, I was living with my partner, Tom, and during the end of the pandemic, made the decision that we wanted to come back to this area, Northern Kentucky, Cincinnati area, which is where his family is, and made the decision at that time to transition into human services. We were joking a little bit off screen, Jay and I were just before the start, and he noted, and I have noted as well, that human services actually outpaced education this past year for the first time in givingusa.org, record keeping of philanthropy. I teased Jay and said that's because I came onto the human services side, which is absolutely not true. But I was joking about that. But I believe there is so much connectivity between human services and education that I want to see both nonprofits in both sectors do extremely well as all the others. And so I am able to apply my passion, my background, my skills and capabilities to helping a worthy organization. And I am here to serve that organization. And so that's a little bit about my background.
And you really did condense it. So there's a lot baked into that. You talked a bit about why you moved from for-profit to not-for-profit. And I was really happy to hear you talk about sales and fundraising differences, similarities, but also to challenge. There are a lot of assumptions about fundraising, which are incorrect, but you also challenged one about sales, which I think is also incorrect, which is that it's all transactional, because really great sales is about building relationships with customers, just as in fundraising. You can't do very well at fundraising, I don't think, unless you build relationships with the people who care about our mission. So, but you made that transition. You explained why, that hunger for mission. And can you talk a little bit about what inspired the transition besides geography? to go into human services after so much time in education?
Sure. I love working for a mission-driven leader, and that is what I found working at Cincinnati Works. In fact, my mission-driven leader actually came from the K through 12 world. She was the former superintendent of Cincinnati Public Schools, and a lot of people don't know this about me, but I'm working to eliminate poverty. So the money I raise is to eliminate poverty. We do it through career coaching, financial wellness, and through getting people in jobs through workforce. And I actually am first generation college grad. So one of the exciting things that I loved about raising money in higher education was helping those students that were going to be experiencing. And student debt is very real. It still is an issue today. It was an issue when I was raising money in higher ed, and it will continue to be an issue. And so what I wanted to do was, where could I be more in touch with the mission? And poverty begins among people are born into poverty. No one elects to go into poverty. And so how is it? So education, workforce, helping people prioritize what's important for them and helping them determine what their goals are. So one of the great things that I learned about higher education is it's truly transformational. There's so few things out there, Jay, that are transformational, but how do we bridge that gap? How do we get people to be able to realize the benefits of something that they may have never aspired to or never attained? And so being able to do that with human services, so being able to come to a beautiful community. We not only have the amazing Cincinnati Reds and also the Bengals, but I'm discovering football, FC, Football Club Cincinnati, which we went all the way to almost to the finals. If there are any soccer type fans out there, whatever we call it, I don't want to mess it up. And so here I am in a beautiful community, and I'm getting to bring all of those amazing experiences that I had working at small institutions such as Alabama A&M University, Purdue, Fort Wayne, even Wittenberg, just up the street in Springfield, Ohio, Wittenberg University. I'm getting to bring that skills and that expertise into I went from Ithaca College, $250 million a year budget to a budget of $5 million a year.
Right.
In addition to that, I went, being a higher education fundraiser, scholarships, named concert series, speaker series, endowed professorships, all things vital to helping putting the icing on the cake in higher ed. 80% of the funds that I raise, 80% of our budget is the funds that I raise. That's huge. That's a huge lift. It really requires you to pull all those tools out of the tool shed and be able to apply different things. And I'm being given the opportunity to diversify the fundraising here at Cincinnati Works. I'm able to take things that I learned in higher education from that grassroots perspective and apply them here. And I'd love to tell you, we're just doing great. Great things are happening. And I work for that mission-driven leader who's giving me the freedoms and the opportunities to do the things that I need to do. I had that also in higher ed. It's just different. It's different in a small nonprofit, and you get to really see the work and the outcomes every day.
I can imagine that if you're in higher ed, where the menu of what you have to represent, I'm not going to say sell because it's not selling, although those similarities, I know there are some similarities there, but you do have kind of a list of things that you can work with. Then in human services, the range of things that you address are so broad that sometimes it must be hard to, build them down into little products. That's the wrong word, but something where you can talk to donors at different scale and say, the opportunity that resonates for you is this project over here that's going to serve so many people in these particular ways, and the cost is X in order to perform that over the next 3 years. But I can imagine that it's harder to develop that menu in a way, and instead of each scholarship costs this, and for a person who's used to going out there and really making things happen, how has that transition been to go into an environment where the range of what you do is so broad and so impactful. But you probably have to find a way to sort of, I don't know, divide it all up and then offer it to people in a way that lets them really sink their teeth in as donors.
My first aha moment being in this space, working in the sector, was how many people want to help people get out of poverty. And that truly was just a big aha moment. I was like, I can do this, because there are people other than me and the people that I work with who truly believe in the mission of the organization. But then how do we divide those up? How do we create things that we're going to get people super excited about, where they can find their niche? And I've had to do that. In coming into this organization, we had to build those out. One of the populations that we work with have been justice impacted. You might be familiar with the term second chance. We refer to that as fair chance hiring. When we're in an economy where you need every capable and able person productive in the workforce, with 3.7% unemployment, nearly 200,000 jobs in the November jobs report, how do we work with those individuals? Well, we're able to take that and package that. And there are people who want to help people who've been justice impacted get back into society, where they want to reclaim their dignity, where they want to have a voice in the system. We played, and this is going to take me off here, but we played this Monopoly game. We didn't play it like you normally play Monopoly and you go in, you try to purchase property, homes. We played it from a poverty perspective. And I was the one in poverty. So I had no homes. I had $500. I'm doing all this stuff. And finally, I just gave up. I just gave up. I just let the system capture me as a human, as an individual. I had no dignity left in that game. Every time I landed on a square, I was giving somebody else money. I had to keep borrowing from the bank in order to try to get further ahead. Those are the people that I'm helping. Those are the people I'm working with, and I'm able to share that experience. Not that we played Monopoly, but what people are living. And I haven't lived that life as an adult. Okay. But I'm able to share those experiences and tell those stories. So being able to take Fair Chance, and another program we've just started is a young adult pipeline. Getting students who maybe want to defer college or further education for a couple of years because either they're not ready, the family's not ready, they don't know what they want to do, etc. And so we have a young adult pipeline that we're specifically working around advanced manufacturing, where we're taking students from high school, putting them in types of programs, soft skills, and tooling you and getting them up to speed on their math, where they're then testing. And they're starting at jobs making $18, $19, $20, $23 an hour directly out of high school, with companies who are working with them on building a career pipeline, but also offering them continuing education, which is that connectivity for me between how is it that I transitioned from human services into, from education into human services. Well, I haven't given up on the whole education part, because that is absolutely essential. I'm just coming about it in a different manner. But the young adult pipeline, how is it that we help people who might need to just pay rent for the next couple of months in order to they get enough money in the coffer to where they're able to do that on their own? So we're really able to niche all of those things, share that story through effective storytelling, or better yet, have our client base, which we refer to as members, because you're members for life at Cincinnati Works, and we're able to have them articulate to the individuals that really want to make a difference in our community. And another great thing is philanthropy is local. There are a lot of people in our community who are aware of Cincinnati Works. January will be 28 years old as an organization, know the measurable metrics and differences that we're making. And we talk about those things, and we talk about how people are regaining their dignity and being contributing members to the community. But I have been able to niche and build out, I hate to say products or services, but I've been able to build those smaller or larger things where you can make a direct impact and see the measurement of those impacts, of that
Well,
impact.
yeah, sure. I mean, making that menu of opportunities available to people so they can see clearly how they can make that impact with you is helpful. I realized that I didn't invite people who are in the room with us live to feel free to tell us if you are making or have made this transition either from the private sector to the not-for-profit world or the impact sector. You can tell us that in the chat. Or if you are making this, transition either from higher ed to human services or vice versa, or you anticipate doing in the future, we'd love to hear from you. So there was something else you said, Wendy, during this that really struck me. You talked earlier about what we said offline. You were citing the Giving USA statistics and how this kind of, public, I'm trying to remember what they categorize it as in Giving USA. All the human services category. I don't think that's what it's called. But at any rate, how that's grown. But one thing that strikes me is there are, what are they, 7,500 members of CASE or something like that in the United States? Maybe it's more. But that's a finite number of institutions. They're raising pretty sizable funds for everything they do on campus and beyond. But there are so many human services organizations. And they're typically raising smaller budgets. Like you just talked about the difference between Ithaca and Cincinnati Works. So I'm wondering, how that is to work in this sector where there's obviously a public appetite for supporting their communities, and there's resonance for the mission, and people are ready to do it if they're asked, like you are doing, inviting people to give. But at the same time, the scale is sometimes just a little smaller. Do you find that there's an appetite for increasing that scale, for people doing more? And if so, how are you addressing that? Because clearly in the aggregate, there's a lot of money going into this more than ever, but the individual opportunities at the individual organization level seem to be a little bit more discrete.
So a couple of points I'd like to make, and I want to throw a great kudo out to DonorSearch. We will actually be contacting them soon because wealth screening is something that has not been done at our organization. And again, if I had not been in higher education, I wouldn't have learned that. But I highly regard the DonorSearch product and know that they are able to, much like I was able to scale the work I'm doing, they are able to scale the work they do because we don't have the database of that. So one unique difference here is we don't have alumni. We don't have people that have a natural affinity to our organization like you do. So we have to actually go out and find people who have that affinity to our organization, as well as we're also able to bring in more money from foundations and corporations, especially in the finance arena through CRA funds, than I was ever able to bring in higher education or education period. And so those also are extremely important donors to the mission of the work that we are doing. And so being able to scale in that manner, meaning seeing a larger percentage of our gifts come in through foundations and through corporations, has also been a significant change to the work that I've been doing in a different outlook that was, again, just an aha moment for me. And Jay, as I took a look at this and around the messaging and around reaching individuals and sharing how they can make an impact, we compete in the greater Cincinnati region. I looked at this through a Google search a couple of months ago. There are 13,000 nonprofits in the greater Cincinnati area.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
A lot of them probably have budgets of less than $100,000. Mm-hmm. We are certainly not the biggest because we have many institutions of higher learning here, as well as a lot of private schools that are here for that parochial and K through 12 education that's available where people can contribute. But it's important. The one thing I noticed that we needed to really work on was donor relationships. How do we have a brand new CEO that hired me. How do we engage those individuals with the CEO? How do we get them to understand by giving tours of the facility? Luckily, we have a brick and mortar facility. So I'm able to give people a quick tour and they're able to see and they're able to hear from people individually about the impact that they're making, which is what drives them to continue to give to our organization versus I'm an old school girl, either pulling out the Rolodex or pulling out the yellow pages and running their fingers, or let your fingers do the walking and let their fingers run through the nonprofit section and see who else they can contribute to. So we do an annual impact report that was done before I got here. We release full financials so people know that the money that they're investing, not that a lot of people want to see the financials, but people do want to know that they've made a good decision philanthropically with the support that they provide. So we have all of that information available to them to reassure them of the work that are their personal contributions to us to be able to carry out the mission.
I know that we've been talking about this from perspective about trying to represent that mission and grow that pot of resources. But I would like to switch back just for a minute to you and your own personal transition. I know that's how we build this, but also I'm interested to know if you can share perhaps specific experience or experiences that had an impact on that transition journey, where you said, okay, I've sort of the way you said, I guess, with software to mission, where you said, this is really the way I can make my impact, especially because I can imagine when you're in an environment where there's a lot of resources, that also means there's a support team for you. There are resources that you might have at your disposal in on the staff level. That there might even be entree when you can say, I'm from XYZ University when you walk into a room. And much that may be absent for you, even though you have this profound impact on the community. So were there specific experiences or moments where you saw how, that profound impact that allowed you to make this transition?
Sure. So one of the things that were motivating to me is the transformation that higher education is going through. Right now, higher education, if you've read the news in the last couple of days, the president of Harvard was being questioned. Sure. Penn, and I'm not saying right or wrong or indifferent, and this is not what this is about, but that has been ongoing for 10, 15 years, my entire time. When I started at my first institution, my president's survival was absolutely imminent upon the governor, the board of trustees, and it was constant, the political that went alongside the work in higher education, which sometimes can overshadow or get in the way of being able to do your outreach to your alumni, so it's a constant, and the constant transition and the churn among university and college presidents is ever going. And I have not been immune to any of that. And so everywhere I go, sitting in the C-suite, reporting to a CEO, I have had to survive those transitions. And some of them I was able to hold on for a little bit, and some of them I wasn't able to hold on as long because they wanted their own person in the chair, especially in the advancement or development role, because the connectivity that you have, the chemistry that you have, the sync. And believe it or not, my personality doesn't match up with everybody, and that's okay. And so sometimes, I pray my daughter never listens to this, but anytime you have a relationship, good, bad, or indifferent, always say, look in the mirror, reflect upon what it is. What did you bring? What didn't you bring? How could you have done things differently? And, it's a fast-paced world, and it's constantly changing, and especially changing in the higher education arena. And so I thought it was time for me to put pause and not return back into higher education, but for me to put pause, but yet still be committed to being in a mission-driven organization, an organization where I felt that I could get up every day and be challenged, be engaged, be excited, and I could actually talk to donors. And sometimes when you're in a leadership role, you get removed from being able to talk to donors. And like in higher ed, I always say, if you're having a bad day, go out in the hall and talk to a student. That's going to make you feel 100% better.
Sure.
So here, you're having a bad day, go talk to a member and go talk to one of our clients. Hear about the challenges that they're living and breathing, and think about how you're making an impact and you're making a difference in their life. And so that's really motivating. And so coming from a larger scale, it just meant more people, sometimes more headaches. And so now on a smaller scale, Jay, I'm super excited. I'm being able to hire a development director. And so that's going to challenge me. I'm a very competitive person, no surprises. I love to raise money. I love to ask people for money. So I look forward to that challenging me as a professional, for me having a strategic partner, for me having a confidant. I've also got a couple of other great team members that manage and lead our marketing communications, that lead our work with grants and foundations. We also get a little bit of money from the city, and we also get some money from United Way as a United Way partner. But it's really going to help challenge me in my role of getting out and meeting more people and growing our donor base and our connectivity. So I'm excited and look forward to having that partner and that strategic confidant to be able to get out there and really hit the road and do even more for the organization.
I don't know if this is far too specific, but I'm curious to know how you, if you could talk about it, how you chose this organization chose you, how that marriage was made, because there are people in our audience who might be thinking, I'd like to make this transition. And we'll talk about that, maybe the knowledge you bring from one to the other for that. But there are some people who might want to make that kind of transition, but they don't know how to find it. They don't know how to go from, let's say, university environment as a major gift officer to working in a social service agency where they would have to make a case that they can do the work. So how did you all find one another, and how might you recommend others look for this kind of transition?
So with Tom, I knew I was moving to Greater Cincinnati. So the sphere of things is all about timing. And so I took a look around and said, what type of organizations are there? Who is themselves going through transition right now? Where is it that I can, be impactful? Where can I make a difference? There's a small search firm in this market. They actually had posted this position. They tried to recruit a friend of mine who was working at University of Cincinnati at the time. I reached out to my higher ed colleagues in the area, told them I was coming to this area and I needed a job and this is what I was looking for. They actually turned me on to this role. They said, this is a great firm with a great reputation. And so I went ahead and reached out to the search consultant, sent my materials in. The first thing I had to do was convince the search consultant that I had the chops and the capability to transition. So I had to sell myself all over again. And I had to say, I can do this. I know I'm leaving a team of 20, but that does a whole variety of things, but really only 3 or 4 fundraisers when you come down to it, to be able to, meaning people who actually do the face-to-face work and are out there meeting with individuals, corporations, and foundations, and to be able to transition and take my skill set and move it in. In fact, I like to think I'm bringing in some best practice. And so I was able to share personally and professionally about my experiences and how it is that they would be able to integrate into this environment. And I was going to actually be an asset to the organization, bringing in that skill set. And Jay, you mentioned timing. As busy as we are right now, those first couple of weeks in January, when the letters have all been opened, the checks have been processed because people still mail in checks, the credit cards have been processed, all those types of things. When all the dust is settled from that, a lot of my colleagues from January 3rd to January 10th, they're going to be reflecting, is this the path I want to continue in? As I see declining enrollment, as I see the skyrocketing prices around healthcare. Maybe I'm a healthcare fundraising professional. How do I explain the increasing insurance costs and medicine costs? And how do I continue to fight that battle? Maybe I can make a difference at a smaller nonprofit. Maybe I can transform that one life that we all hope to be able to do. And that's why we do the work that we're doing. Or maybe you want to try something different and you've been in, raising money for animals or child welfare or human trafficking or whatever the case may be. and you want to do something different, you're going to be thinking about that in the early parts of January, because that's when a lot of our colleagues really start to make the inroads and want to transition to something different. I did it a little over a year ago in October, as I knew I was coming to this area. And fortunately, I had friends looking out for me that made some key introductions. And like I said, with the search firm, I was able to convince them and then went through the process. And here I am.
I'm wondering if there was something when you made that case that really sticks out for you, where you were able to say that here's a set of experiences I have, or that really do translate into this kind of role.
So I will always believe higher education, more education, whether it be at the 2-year, the 4-year, graduate level, etc. That is how you move people out of poverty. Education is how you move people out. And being able to, whether you're a lifelong learner, my brother did not get his college degree until he was 40 years of age. And so how is it that we convince people that if you really want to impact your family, it's through education? But for some people, you got to go to work. And you've got to be able to make an income to be able to afford that education. And maybe you're going to be a non-traditional student, and it's going to take you 10, 15, 20 years to be able to do that. But I was able to talk about being a first-generation college graduate. And when I went to college, I was able to wait tables and pay my next semester bill. Students today can't do that. So I was able to talk about how I helped people move out of poverty by getting an education. And now here I am working with their families and helping their families see those bright futures for their children.
I love that response, because it's tailored to your passion, as well as how you understand the role and how you could translate your experience into that role. It's not so much just about here are the skills or the knowledge that I have, although that's all important. So maybe the next question for you would be, what kind of skills or knowledge do you find transported easily and have been most important to you in your new role?
I grew up in poverty, Jay. My mother was a hairdresser and a single parent. And so it was real. I was the first person in my family to go to college. And so it was really meaningful for me to be able to, I understand, even though I haven't lived it in quite some time, but I've been working since I was 12, 13 years of age. But to be able to be a good storyteller, to be able to continue to keep people at the forefront of the work I'm doing, as well as the mission, I think really sold what it is that I'm able to do.
Right.
So I have a personal experience. In addition to that, I truly believe in the mission of the organization. And I'm told that story.
And then day to day, though, in your role now, what are there things that you keep looking back at and you say, wow, well, I did that here and I can do it here? Maybe some specific examples of how, whether it was building a major gifts program or executing a campaign, things that you found translated really seamlessly from one environment, education, to another one, social services.
So I would say some of my struggles are having some of those resources, having to plan further out to have those resources. Also, working in higher education, I was raising money for scholarships and, additional resources to help faculty or professors to be able to do their job and educate students better and to improve the student experience, all of which are very important. Here, I'm raising money for payroll. I'm raising money we never want to say keep the light bill on, but I'm raising money to keep the light bill on. I'm raising money for the pens at everyone's desk, for people's salaries, 80% of our budget. And so that's a whole different level of responsibility that you have to be prepared for that I had not done previously. And then, being able to have the resources to be able to, wealth screen. Okay. And it's a little different here with no alumni. I have worked through the donor list that were here, people who've given to us for the past 3 to 5 years. And I believe there's still opportunity in there, and I'm continuing to mine for those little nuggets. but I'm going to have to buy some lists, and I'm going to have to expand my own personal network and build my personal network to bring more people into the fold, which is a little different than what I did in higher education. I had to connect with alumni, connect with donors in the community, outside the community, with people who wanted to support that entity. And so here I'm doing a lot more storytelling and a lot more discovery.
We didn't talk about this before, but I'm curious if you have thoughts about when you're doing donor interaction now, how it is to talk with people who hopefully are closer to these things that you're working on, the mission, than they might be if you're talking to a donor at a university and they went to school 30, 40 years ago. They love the place, they wear the brand, they have the sweatshirt, they went to the game, but this is different, right? It's right there in Cincinnati. You're going and you're talking to a donor. Some of them may really know this experience. Like you had the experience as a young person, you're translating that into action today. Some of your donors may and some may not. Is there a way that you're communicating with people when it comes to talking with donors about these kinds of levels of assistance that is a little bit different from what you had experienced in higher ed, where the conversation just takes a different tone or a different character?
So in this area, poverty is rampant across the United States. Yes. In the state of Ohio, poverty is 14%. In greater Cincinnati, it's 28%. So I'm able to relate. The person who got you your coffee this morning is more than likely on the edge of poverty. The person who you handed your dry cleaning to is more than likely your housekeeper who comes and cleans your house. So there is a lot of connectivity. And we have a young professionals board, and that young professionals board it's 15 to 20 members. I haven't gotten the latest data from it yet, but I'm able to infuse that sense of responsibility in those young professionals and able to share with them and their excitement and energy around poverty. But I'm able to tell the story of the people that we're helping. The person at one of the local hospitals who started on the food service line utilized the benefits of the hospital and is now an RN. Now, who doesn't want that story? We all need RNs. And so what a caring, serving individual, mom of 3 children, single parent, who's now able to. So again, through the storytelling. So even though the majority of people, 95%, maybe even 99% of the people that I raise money from have never personally experienced poverty. They interact daily with people who are living in poverty. And so hopefully I open their eyes so the next time they go and they interact with someone who's potentially living in poverty, they think about us. They think about the work we're doing at Cincinnati Works.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Going back again to making this kind of real for people who might be contemplating this kind of transition, and their background will be different from yours, but they will still need to think about what kind of steps they need to take. Do you have some advice that you'd give to someone considering this kind of career transition, maybe beyond the headhunters, especially leaning into maybe the personal networks that they have, but anything else that would give them maybe the 3 or 4 or 5 steps so that they can go from being where they are right now to where they'd like to be?
Do some self-assessment. Take a look. What gets you excited? I was a junior achievement kid. So junior achievement is something that I'm extremely passionate about. My son's an Eagle Scout. So scouting is something that I have a lot of passion about. So do some self-assessment. What is it? Where do your other passions lie? Volunteer. Get to know these organizations. Put yourself out there. There is so much more to life than the world in which you're living right now. So get yourself active and engaged. My daughter's in the DC area. She's literally going through a background check to volunteer 3 hours a month at the Smithsonian Museum. She had to be interviewed. She had to go through all kinds of processes in order for her to volunteer. And so you don't have to do that to be able to help somebody else and to be able to support a worthy cause, a worthy environment. Find out about the people who are in your backyard. What's making a difference in their lives? You have skills, talents, and capabilities. Do it on a volunteer level before determining you're just going to jump feet first into the pond and don't know whether it's the bottom. So that would be. Also network. I'm a member of AFP, the Association for Fundraising Professionals, which if you are a fundraiser, you can be a part of that entity, no matter what organization you're raising money from. Build your network, okay? Get to know your, other friends or soon to be new friends in those industries. So that way you can hear about their experiences and what motivates them. The thing that another eye-opener here is I have so many connections now in the arts, museums, theater, and which all arts, but also hospital. I mean, all the different other nonprofit sectors, from Humane Society to the parks, to, people give to parks. I mean, it's amazing to me what it is that people get excited about and what they give to, and ask them questions. Build your own network of fundraisers and you're in your collective niche there, and ask them questions about their experiences. I've had people say to me, boy, aren't you glad you're out of higher education now? So, because they're like, there's so much more out there to be able to do, and so many more organizations to help. And so, when I was in higher ed for nearly 15 years, I thought, this is the best thing ever, but there's so much more.
As you talked about that, it struck me also all really, really helpful advice, very thoughtful. There are a couple of things you didn't list, and I don't know if it's because you don't think they're valuable or just because they should be secondary. A resume, a LinkedIn profile, looking through Indeed. The reason I'm mentioning this is, what role do you think that the traditional, I'm going to send out a resume and cross my fingers and maybe make a phone call, what role, if any, does that play in getting the kind of position that's really meaningful to a person like yourself?
To me, that's all secondary. Network your way in.
Yeah.
Network, build your connections, network your way in. I had a colleague call me this morning. I've got the open director position. We're in the process. She reached out to me and she said, I think I've got someone for you. And this person actually reached out to me and asked for a coffee meeting. And I said, love to meet with you. Can we meet in January? Little did I know that this person was reaching out to me because they wanted to find out more about the role that I have posted. And so that didn't even strike me as that being that. So fortunately, she has a friend who we are mutual friends, and that friend reached out to me and said, no, she reached out because she wanted to meet and talk. I said, well, just get her to apply because we're in the process right now. But network with, of course, your resume. Take a look at what it is that you can write about that's transformative. Excuse me, not what's the word I want to use? Not transformative, but when you have skills in one area, but you need skills in another area, but what are things that you did that were similar? And I cannot think of the word.
No, but I understand what you mean. I think everybody does. And
yes,
one other thought occurred to me, though, and I know this is another thing that's close to you. We haven't discussed it so much in the session today, but that's about issues related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. The reason I'm mentioning it here is because sometimes the networks of people we have are reflective of where we come from. But if you don't mind my suggesting it, what you just talked about with building our networks, investing time in organizations where maybe the experiences of others are different from our own, going and volunteering, not just in the places that we already know, but places where we are less comfortable, where the experiences are different, that would extend our network. The reason I'm mentioning this, and I want to ask you about this, is that if we are going to try and make an effort to have organizations that are truly reflective of the breadth of our community, whoever we are, whatever our personal identity is, where these people are also from different identities, it would seem to be that you couldn't just look to who you're connected to on LinkedIn or who you grew up with, because those neighborhoods are going to be more homogeneous. So do you have any
100%.
thoughts on making sure that we're also expansive in our networks and that they're reflective of a broader community maybe than the ones we knew when we started?
You've got to get out of your comfort zone. If you stretch your arms out and the people that you can touch all look like you, then you aren't getting very uncomfortable. and you need to get uncomfortable. I actually have a DEI certification from Cornell. And so part of my pandemic was I want to expand my skills. I want to learn more. I want to be able to contribute more. And so I took a DEI certification course and got that certification. So it's one of the tools in my toolbox, but that's all it is a tool in the toolbox. You actually have to utilize it and use it. So get out of your comfort zone, go to those networking events, even though you're tired, volunteer, volunteer. As a professional, you should be sitting on one or two other boards and make them boards that people wouldn't think to put you on or wouldn't think that you didn't. And then don't sit on the fundraising committee, go be on the finance committee. So that way you don't have a conflict with the work that you're doing. But expanding your network is absolutely essential as you want to transition in any career and move into a different type of arena. But everything you mentioned, from the resume to LinkedIn, make sure that those are kept up to date and make sure they're reflective of the direction you want to move in. And you should only be looking forward. Remember that windshield is large, the rearview mirror is small. So keep moving forward and positioning yourself for success and being able to do those things. And that's going to be absolutely essential. But I believe in the power of your network. And like I said, if you can reach your arms out and your network looks just like you aren't reaching far enough.
Right. That's great advice for every single person, including myself. I want to, is kind of a wrap up question, although we welcome any thoughts, questions from anybody in the audience here. And in fact, I'm going to see if there's transferable skills. That's the word we were looking for earlier.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen, for that. Yes, sometimes we just need a little help. So thank you for that. If anybody has a question or a comment, feel free to add it here. But I did want to pose this question. It's something we talked about earlier, which is thinking forward once again, but now thinking about the future of these sectors. You've talked a lot, and their intersectionality, perhaps. You talked a lot about the pressures on higher ed, and they are real. And we saw that played out before Congress a few days ago. But it's been going on for a long time. We've also seen the pressures on social services, human services, in so many ways, especially as government has not always found a way to fund those things or decided to put their energies and resources elsewhere. But is there a way that these entities are coming together to address the shortfalls or the challenges that they both have? And what do you imagine are some of the ways that they might be both partnering together, as well as the ways that we can help them in doing that?
So when I came to Cincinnati Works, I think another positive that I brought was the capability. Of course, at universities, I did it through the different colleges, where I brought different colleges. Maybe I brought business and the arts, liberal arts together and talked about the intersectionality of those two colleges and or schools, and how they were able to go after funding together. In the nonprofit arena, whether you be higher education, human services, the parks, there should be connectivity among the work that you do. And so there are actually foundations in our area who are looking for nonprofits to come together and request support for a joint project where they're going to bring them. They don't want to continue to see overlap. Okay. They really want to see innovation. We're reading about how billionaires, I saw an article, I didn't get a chance to read it just a couple of days ago, where yet again another billionaire signed the pledge to give away all of their funding. We're seeing transformational gifts that are being given. You alone, me as a $5 million entity, to go after a $500,000 or even $1 million gift would transform, it would blow, we wouldn't know what to do with that. In fact, that's one thing I've charged the senior leadership at Cincinnati Works to do. What if we got $1 million gift tomorrow and someone said, here, what are you going to do with it? And it's happening to nonprofits all over right now, where they're literally answering the phone and somebody is leaving them a transformational gift. Are you prepared? Who are you going to partner with? Who are you going to work well with? How are you going to collectively innovate to make a difference? That is the opportunity that exists for the future. And I charge everyone listening, Find that other nonprofit to partner with. Find your colleague to strategize with. Find and listen to your client base. Listen to the people you're serving. Present ideas to leadership. Get buy-in and go ask. The worst thing they're going to say is no or maybe.
Or not now. And, and thank you so much for this, Wendy. Really, really wonderful advice all the way around. Grateful for you to tell a bit of your story, as well as give us some practical suggestions for our own transformations and our organizational ones. If people want to learn more about you and your work, how can they follow what you do, and how can they learn more about Cincinnati Works?
Connect with me on LinkedIn, cincinnatiworks.org, or my email address is very simple. My personal email address is my first and last name @gmail.com. So please reach out to me. I had a former colleague reach out to me today, asked me a couple of questions, which she already knew the answer to, but I was able to validate her responses. I am always available. And so I am never too busy. I might push you a couple of weeks while I get through my busy time. Okay. As I said a little bit earlier, but as fundraisers, we have to be each other's champion and cheerleader. We have to be resources. We have to be confidants. And so I encourage you to reach out to me directly. I am always able to help, and I'm going to learn something in the process as well.
Thank you so much. Again, I want to encourage everybody to think about reaching out. You'll find Wendy quite easily on LinkedIn, and I know you'll find the organization there. If you're thinking about places that are making a great impact and you want to help out, that's one more place that hopefully you can put on your list this year and maybe beyond. And we also have a whole list of other people who have been talking about subjects which I know are near and dear to you throughout the year. Please do take a look for that over on the DonorSearch website. And that's at donorsearch.net under the resources tab, or you can look for a recording of this session and share it with your colleagues, as well as all the other sessions this year and beyond under the resources tab, as well as on the YouTube site, the DonorSearch YouTube channel, I should say. So with that, I want to encourage all of you to stick around for a minute and pull out your phones. You're going to see a little QR code where you can learn more about your donors. And one more thing, which you won't find in either of those places, is something for your ear, and that's the podcast, where we are in the process of interviewing a number of the CNN heroes for 2023. We've just done 3 of those interviews, and we have 3 more coming. So those are wonderful people who are quite inspiring. If you missed that telecast, you'll see it online at CNN. That's available for you. That was from Sunday. So if you'd like to hear more about their stories, as we were listening to Wendy's stories today, you will find all that over on our podcast, which is the Philanthropy Masterminds podcast. So do give it a listen if you will. So until next time, which may be next year, unless we do something special between now and then, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful season, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Jay.